Marcus Chen adjusted his tie for the third time as he walked through the automatic doors of Children's Memorial Hospital. The crisp October morning had given way to an unseasonably warm afternoon, and beads of perspiration gathered at his hairline despite the air conditioning that greeted him in the pristine lobby. His worn leather portfolio, a remnant from better days, felt heavier with each step across the polished marble floor. The receptionist looked up with a practiced smile as he approached her desk. "I have an interview at 2:30 with Dr. Harrison Blackwell," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through his veins. The woman's fingers danced across her keyboard, and she nodded toward the elevator bank. 23rd floor, suite 2315, she replied. Dr. Blackwell's office. Good luck. Marcus thanked her and made his way to the elevators, passing beneath the hospital's mission statement etched in gold lettering on the wall. Excellence in pediatric care through compassion, innovation, and dedication. The words felt like both a promise and a judgment as he read them. 2 years ago, those same principles had guided every decision he made as a pediatric surgeon. 2 years ago, before everything fell apart. The elevator climbed steadily, and Marcus watched the floor numbers tick by. Each one represented another chance to rehearse his answers, another moment to prepare for questions about the gap in his employment, another second to steel himself for the conversation that could change everything for him and Emma. His daughter's face flashed in his mind. 8 years old with dark eyes that held too much worry for someone her age. She had been 5 when the malpractice lawsuit began, 6 when it ended with his medical license suspended, 7 when they lost the house. Now, at 8, she understood why they moved to the tiny apartment across town, why Daddy couldn't work at the hospital anymore, why they ate pasta 3 nights a week and shopped at thrift stores. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Marcus stepped into the carpeted hallway. The walls were lined with photographs of the hospital's history, black and white images of nurses in starched caps and doctors in long white coats. Progress shots showed the expansion of wings, the addition of new technology, the faces of children who had been saved within these walls. Marcus had dreamed of having his photograph on a wall like this someday. Chief of pediatric surgery, perhaps, or head of the trauma unit. He had published papers on innovative surgical techniques for treating congenital heart defects in infants. His colleagues had respected his precision, his calm under pressure, his ability to see solutions where others saw only complications. The lawsuit had changed everything. A routine appendectomy on a 12-year-old girl had gone wrong when the child developed an unexpected allergic reaction to anesthesia. Despite Marcus's quick thinking and flawless execution of emergency protocols, the girl had suffered complications that left her with permanent damage. The family sued, claiming negligence. The hospital administration, facing pressure from their insurance company and board of directors, had quietly suggested that Marcus resign while the case was pending. He had fought it, of course. Hired lawyers he couldn't afford, underwent peer review after peer review, submitted to investigations that picked apart every decision he had made in that operating room. In the end, the medical board cleared him of any wrongdoing. The allergic reaction was unforeseeable, they concluded. His response had been textbook perfect. If anything, his quick action had prevented the child's death. But the damage was done. The hospital had already replaced him. His reputation was tarnished. No other hospital would hire a surgeon with an active malpractice case, even one he would eventually win. By the time his name was cleared, he had been out of practice for 18 months. The medical field, he discovered, had little tolerance for gaps in experience, even involuntary ones. Marcus found suite 2315 and paused outside the door. Through the frosted glass, he could see the silhouette of someone moving around inside. Dr. Harrison Blackwell, chief of surgery, a man whose reputation preceded him in medical circles throughout the city. Demanding, brilliant, and notoriously difficult to impress. The position Marcus was interviewing for was not a return to surgery. Those days were behind him, at least for now. Instead, he was hoping for a role in the hospital's community outreach program, visiting schools and clinics to provide basic medical care and education. It was a step down from where he had been, but it was a step back into medicine. More importantly, it came with health insurance and a steady paycheck. Emma needed new shoes, and their landlord had been increasingly vocal about late rent payments. Marcus had sold everything of value they owned months ago. His medical school textbooks, Emma's baby furniture that he had hoped to save for grandchildren someday, even his wedding ring from his marriage to Sarah, Emma's mother who had died in a car accident when Emma was just 2 years old. He knocked on the door and heard Dr. Blackwell's voice call for him to enter. The office was expansive, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. Medical journals were stacked neatly on shelves, and diplomas and awards covered one entire wall. Dr. Blackwell, a man in his early 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, looked up from his computer screen. "Dr. Chen, I presume," he said, standing to shake Marcus's hand. His grip was firm, his gaze appraising. "Please, have a seat." Marcus settled into the leather chair across from the imposing desk and opened his portfolio. He had prepared thoroughly for this interview, researching the hospital's outreach programs, studying their patient demographics, even memorizing statistics about childhood obesity and vaccination rates in underserved communities. "Thank you for this opportunity, Dr. Blackwell," Marcus began. "I understand you're looking for someone to expand the community health initiatives, particularly in the downtown area." Dr. Blackwell leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "Tell me, Dr. Chen," he said, his voice carrying a note of skepticism that made Marcus's stomach tighten. "Why should we trust someone who hasn't practiced medicine in 2 years with representing our hospital in the community?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus had anticipated it, had rehearsed his answer countless times in front of the bathroom mirror in his apartment. But sitting here, under Dr. Blackwell's penetrating stare, the words felt inadequate before he even spoke them. Marcus took a steadying breath, gathering his thoughts as Dr. Blackwell waited for his response. The question about his 2-year absence from medicine hung between them like a wall he needed to climb. He was about to speak when his phone buzzed against his leg. He ignored it, maintaining eye contact with the chief of surgery. "The community health program represents exactly the kind of medicine I went into this field to practice," Marcus said carefully. "Direct patient care, education, prevention rather than just treatment. My experience with pediatric surgery taught me that the best outcomes happen when we catch problems early, when we build relationships with families and communities." Dr. Blackwell nodded slowly, making a note on the paper in front of him. "Your residency was here at Children's Memorial, I see. Dr. Patricia Vance speaks highly of your surgical skills. She mentioned you had a particular gift for working with anxious children." Marcus felt a spark of hope. Dr. Vance had been his mentor during residency, a brilliant surgeon who had taught him that technical skill meant nothing without compassion. "Yes, she taught me that healing begins the moment a child feels safe. That's something I could bring to the community program." His phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. Marcus shifted in his chair, fighting the urge to check it. Emma was at after-school care until 5, and they had strict instructions only to call in emergencies. The timing couldn't be worse. Dr. Blackwell glanced at his watch. "We have about 20 minutes, Dr. Chen. I'd like to hear your thoughts on implementing preventive care protocols in schools with limited resources." Marcus launched into his prepared answer about mobile health units and partnership programs with local clinics. But his phone continued to vibrate every few minutes, creating an undercurrent of anxiety that made it difficult to concentrate. By the time he finished explaining his vision for community health education, sweat had beaded on his forehead again. "Interesting perspective," Dr. Blackwell said, though his tone remained non-committal. "Tell me about your approach to working with diverse populations." The downtown area serves primarily Latino and African American families. As Marcus began to answer, his phone rang outright. The sound cut through the quiet office like an alarm. He fumbled to silence it, his face burning with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Blackwell. Let me just turn this off completely." Dr. Blackwell's expression had cooled noticeably. Perhaps you should take that call, Dr. Chen. It seems quite urgent. Marcus hesitated, then glanced at the screen. The number wasn't one he recognized, but something about the persistence made his medical instincts flare. In his surgical days, repeated calls usually meant someone was in trouble. I apologize, but may I step outside for just one moment? Dr. Blackwell gestured toward the door with obvious irritation. Make it quick. Marcus stepped into the hallway and answered the phone. Hello? Is this Dr. Marcus Chen? The voice was young, female, and shaking with panic. This is Marcus Chen, he said carefully. He no longer used his medical title in most situations. Oh, thank God, the voice continued. My name is Carolina Vasquez. I'm a nanny, and I found your number in Mrs. Montgomery's emergency contacts. I'm outside Children's Memorial Hospital with little Sophia, and something's wrong with me. I feel dizzy and confused, and I think I might faint. I don't know what to do. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Where exactly are you? We're in the parking garage, level 3. I was bringing Sophia for her checkup, but I had to sit down. I'm scared I'm going to pass out and leave her alone. Marcus was already moving toward the elevator. I'm in the hospital now. Stay exactly where you are. Keep talking to me. What symptoms are you experiencing? My vision is getting blurry, and my hands are shaking. I feel like I might throw up. Sophia is crying because she's scared, and I don't know how to calm her down. The elevator seemed to take forever. Marcus pressed the button for the parking garage while keeping Carolina on the line. When did you last eat? Are you diabetic? I had breakfast this morning, but I've been feeling off all day. I'm not diabetic, but my grandmother was. Marcus exited the elevator and followed the sound of crying. He found them near a silver sedan, a young woman in her 20s slumped against the car door, her face pale and clammy, and a little girl with dark curls who couldn't have been older than 6, sobbing uncontrollably. Carolina? Marcus approached slowly, not wanting to frighten the child further. I'm Marcus. We spoke on the phone. The woman looked up at him with unfocused eyes. Thank you for coming. I don't know what's happening to me. Marcus knelt beside her, his training taking over completely. He checked her pulse, noted the rapid heartbeat and shallow breathing. The symptoms pointed to hypoglycemia, possibly brought on by stress or skipped meals. Can you tell me your full name and today's date? Carolina struggled to answer, her words slurring slightly. The little girl, Sophia, had stopped crying and was watching Marcus with wide, frightened eyes. Sophia, Marcus said gently, turning to the child. My name is Marcus, and I'm going to help Carolina feel better, okay? You're being very brave. The child nodded solemnly. Is Miss Carolina going to be okay? She's going to be fine, Marcus assured her, though he was increasingly concerned about Carolina's condition. He needed to get her blood sugar up quickly and get both of them inside the hospital. But as he helped Carolina to her feet, he realized with a sinking heart that his interview with Dr. Blackwell was continuing without him, and his absence was growing longer by the minute. Marcus glanced at his watch and felt his stomach drop. He had been gone from Dr. Blackwell's office for 8 minutes already. The interview was slipping away from him with each passing second, but Carolina's condition was deteriorating rapidly. Her skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and she was having difficulty standing even with his support. Carolina, I need you to listen to me very carefully, Marcus said, steadying her against the car. I think your blood sugar is dangerously low. Do you have anything sweet with you? Candy, juice, anything? She shook her head weakly. I don't think so. My purse is in the car, but I can't remember what's in it. Sophia tugged on Marcus's jacket. Mister, I have fruit snacks in my backpack. Mama always packs them for me. You're a very smart girl, Sophia, Marcus said, accepting the small package from her tiny hands. These might help Carolina feel better. He tore open the fruit snacks and helped Carolina chew them slowly. The simple sugars would provide temporary relief, but she needed proper medical attention. As a former surgeon, he recognized the signs of severe hypoglycemia. Left untreated, she could slip into a coma. His phone buzzed with a text message. Dr. Blackwell wondering where he was, no doubt. Marcus ignored it and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at Children's Memorial Hospital, parking garage level 3. I have a young woman experiencing what appears to be severe hypoglycemia. She needs immediate medical attention. Sir, are you a medical professional? Marcus hesitated for just a moment. I have medical training, yes. The patient is conscious but disoriented, with symptoms consistent with low blood sugar. I've administered some glucose, but she needs support. An ambulance is being dispatched to your location. Please stay on the line. Marcus kept one hand on Carolina's wrist, monitoring her pulse while Sophia pressed close to his side. The little girl had stopped crying, but her eyes remained wide with fear. Is Miss Carolina going to have to go to the hospital? Sophia asked quietly. The doctors here are going to take very good care of her, Marcus assured her. And you're being so helpful and brave. Carolina is lucky to have you with her. Carolina's breathing had stabilized somewhat after the fruit snacks, but Marcus knew it was only a temporary measure. He needed to keep her alert and talking until the paramedics arrived. Carolina, can you tell me about Sophia's appointment today? What kind of checkup is she here for? Just routine, Carolina mumbled, her words still slightly slurred. Mrs. Montgomery likes to be thorough. Sophia sees the pediatrician every 6 months. Mrs. Montgomery, Marcus repeated. Is that Sophia's mother? Sophia nodded solemnly. Mama had to work today, but she said Miss Carolina would take good care of me. Miss Carolina always takes good care of me. The simple trust in the child's voice hit Marcus like a physical blow. Here was a little girl, probably not much younger than Emma, depending on an adult who was now in medical crisis. He thought of all the times Emma had looked at him with that same unwavering faith, believing that Daddy could fix anything, solve any problem. His phone rang again. Dr. Blackwell's office number appeared on the screen. Marcus stared at it for a long moment before declining the call. There would be consequences for this choice, he knew. Dr. Blackwell was not the type of man who tolerated disruptions or excuses. The interview was over, effectively ending before it had really begun. But as he looked down at Sophia's trusting face and felt Carolina's pulse gradually strengthening under his fingers, Marcus realized he couldn't have made any other choice. This was who he was, who he had always been. The instinct to heal, to protect, to serve others in their moment of greatest need had driven him through medical school, through residency, through the long nights of surgery when a child's life hung in the balance. The sound of sirens echoed through the parking garage, growing louder as the ambulance approached. Marcus flagged down the paramedics as they emerged from the elevator with their equipment. What do we have? The lead paramedic asked, kneeling beside Carolina. 20-something female, severe hypoglycemia, Marcus reported efficiently. Symptoms began approximately 15 minutes ago. Patient reports feeling dizzy, nauseous, with blurred vision and confusion. I administered simple carbohydrates about 8 minutes ago with some improvement in consciousness. The paramedic looked up at him with new respect. You medical? I have training, Marcus said simply. As the paramedics worked to stabilize Carolina with an 4-line and glucose solution, Marcus turned his attention to Sophia. The little girl was watching the medical activity with fascination rather than fear now that professional help had arrived. Sophia, do you know your mama's phone number? Marcus asked gently. She recited the number with the careful precision of a well-taught child. Marcus dialed it immediately. Hello? A woman's voice answered, sophisticated and concerned. Mrs. Montgomery? This is Marcus Chen. I'm calling about your daughter Sophia. She's fine, but there's been a medical emergency with her nanny Carolina. What? Where are you? Is Sophia hurt? We're at Children's Memorial Hospital. Sophia is completely unharmed, but Carolina became ill in the parking garage. She's being treated by paramedics now, and they'll likely transport her to the emergency room. I'll be right there, Mrs. Montgomery said immediately. Can you stay with Sophia until I arrive? Of course, Marcus replied, looking down at the little girl who had wrapped her small hand around his fingers. As the paramedics prepared to transport Carolina to the emergency room, Marcus realized that his choice had been made the moment he heard the panic in that young woman's voice. Some things were more important than job interviews, more valuable than professional opportunities. Some things defined who you were at your core, and no amount of desperation could change that fundamental truth. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood in the emergency room waiting area with Sophia curled up in one of the plastic chairs beside him. The little girl had fallen asleep against his arm, exhausted from the stress of the afternoon. Her small hand still clutched the empty fruit snack wrapper, as if holding on to the moment when she had helped save Miss Carolina. Marcus checked his phone and winced. 4 missed calls from Dr. Blackwell's office and 2 text messages. The first was professionally terse, Dr. Chen, please return to my office immediately. The second, sent 15 minutes later, was colder, your interview slot has been given to another candidate. Please contact HR to reschedule if you wish to continue the application process. He closed his eyes and leaned back against the uncomfortable chair. The rescheduling process would take weeks, if they even allowed it. Dr. Blackwell had made it clear that reliability was paramount in his department. Walking out of an interview, regardless of the reason, would be seen as a character flaw rather than a moment of compassion. The automatic doors swooshed open, and a woman in an elegant navy business suit rushed into the waiting area. She had dark hair pulled back in a chignon and moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to command. Her eyes swept the room until they landed on Sophia, and her expression immediately softened. Sophia, sweetheart, the woman called gently. The little girl stirred and opened her eyes. Mama. She scrambled down from the chair and ran into her mother's arms. Mrs. Montgomery lifted her daughter and held her tightly, her eyes closing briefly in relief. Are you okay, baby? Were you scared? Miss Carolina got sick, but this nice man helped her, Sophia said, pointing to Marcus. He made her feel better with my fruit snacks. Mrs. Montgomery turned to Marcus, and he was struck by the intelligence in her dark eyes. She was younger than he had expected from her voice, perhaps in her early 30s, with an air of authority that suggested she was accustomed to handling crises. You must be Marcus Chen, she said, extending her hand. Isabella Montgomery. I cannot thank you enough for what you did today. Marcus stood and shook her hand. How is Carolina? Have you heard anything from the doctors? They're running tests now, but the paramedic said you likely prevented her from losing consciousness completely. Your quick thinking made all the difference. Isabella's voice carried genuine gratitude. I understand you were here for something else when this happened. A job interview, Marcus admitted. I was meeting with Dr. Blackwell about a position in the community health program. Isabella's eyebrows rose slightly. Harrison Blackwell? I know him well. He's brilliant but not particularly understanding when it comes to schedule disruptions. Marcus managed a rueful smile. That would be an accurate assessment. I believe the phrase used was that my interview slot had been given to another candidate. You gave up a job interview to help my daughter and her nanny? Isabella asked, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. Before Marcus could answer, a nurse approached them. Mrs. Montgomery? Carolina Vasquez is stable and asking for you. She's in Bay 7 if you'd like to see her. Isabella looked between Marcus and Sophia. Would you mind watching Sophia for just a few more minutes while I check on Carolina? Of course, Marcus said immediately. As Isabella disappeared through the double doors leading to the treatment area, Sophia climbed back onto the chair next to Marcus. She studied his face with the serious consideration that only children could manage. "Are you sad about your job?" she asked quietly. Marcus considered the question carefully. "A little disappointed, maybe. But I'm glad I was there to help Miss Carolina and you." "My mama is very important," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "She helps lots of people with their problems. Maybe she can help you too." "That's very kind of you to think of me," Marcus replied. "But sometimes grown-ups have to solve their own problems." His phone buzzed with another text message. This one was from Emma's after-school program. "Hi Mr. Chen, just a reminder that pickup is at 5 p.m. today. Emma is having a great afternoon and can't wait to tell you about her art project." Marcus glanced at the clock on the wall. 4:15. He needed to leave soon to collect Emma, but he didn't want to abandon Sophia until her mother returned. The little girl had been through enough trauma for one day without being left with strangers. Isabella reappeared through the doors, looking relieved. "Carolina is going to be fine. They want to keep her for observation overnight, but her blood sugar is stable now. She asked me to thank you again for everything you did." "I'm glad she's okay," Marcus said, standing. "I should probably head out to pick up my daughter from school." "You have a daughter? How old is she?" 8. "Her name is Emma." Isabella's expression grew thoughtful. "The same age as Sophia. I'm sure she's wondering where her daddy is." Marcus felt a familiar pang of guilt. Emma had learned not to ask too many questions when he was late, had adapted to the uncertainty that had become their normal life. She would be waiting by the window at the after-school center, watching for his car, trying not to worry that something had happened to him too. "I really should go," Marcus said, but Sophia suddenly wrapped her arms around his waist in an unexpected hug. "Thank you for taking care of us," she whispered into his jacket. Marcus felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. "You're very welcome, sweetheart. Take good care of Miss Carolina, okay?" As he walked toward the parking garage, Marcus tried to calculate how long it would take to find another job opportunity. The rent was due in 10 days. Emma needed new shoes and a winter coat. His savings account had been empty for months, and he had been counting on this interview to change their trajectory. But as he replayed the afternoon's events, he realized he would make the same choice again. Some things mattered more than money or professional advancement. Some moments defined who you were when everything else was stripped away. He had lost a job opportunity today, but he had saved a young woman from a potentially life-threatening medical crisis and protected a frightened child from trauma. As he reached his car, Marcus allowed himself one moment of grief for the opportunity that had slipped away. Then he started the engine and headed toward Emma's school, where his own little girl was waiting for him to come home. Isabella Montgomery sat in the back seat of her BMW as her driver navigated the early evening traffic. Sophia was buckled in beside her, chattering about the afternoon's events with the resilience that only children possessed. But Isabella's mind kept returning to the man who had sacrificed his own opportunity to help her family. Marcus Chen had given up a job interview to care for strangers. In Isabella's world of corporate boardrooms and charity galas, such selflessness was rare enough to be shocking. She had built her fortune by recognizing character in people, by seeing potential where others saw only surface appearances. There was something about Marcus that intrigued her beyond mere gratitude. "Mama, do you think Marcus's little girl likes art?" Sophia asked, pressing her face against the window as they passed a playground where children were playing in the fading daylight. "I'm sure she does, sweetheart. Most children your age love to be creative. Maybe she could come play with me sometime." Marcus seemed lonely. Isabella looked at her daughter with surprise. "What makes you say that?" He had sad eyes, Sophia said with the matter-of-fact wisdom that sometimes emerged from her 6-year-old observations. "Like when you look at pictures of Daddy and get quiet." The comparison caught Isabella off guard. Her husband David had died in a climbing accident 3 years ago, leaving her to raise Sophia alone while managing the Montgomery Foundation and her various business interests. She had learned to compartmentalize her grief, to function at full capacity during the day and save her morning for the private hours after Sophia was asleep. But Sophia was right. There had been something in Marcus's eyes that spoke of loss, of carrying burdens that others couldn't see. The careful way he had interacted with her daughter, the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to Carolina, the quiet dignity with which he had accepted the loss of his job opportunity. These were the markers of someone who understood suffering and had chosen compassion over bitterness. Where in the world are you right now as you hear this story? Isabella found herself wondering about the people who might relate to Marcus's situation, who might understand the weight of choosing others over self-interest. Are you listening from a place where you've had to make difficult choices between what you need and what others need from you? The world is full of quiet heroes who make these decisions every day, often without recognition or reward. Isabella pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Dr. Harrison Blackwell's number. As one of the largest donors to Children's Memorial Hospital, she had access to most department heads when necessary. Her foundation had funded 2 new pediatric surgical suites and an entire wing of the research facility. "Harrison," she said when he answered. "It's Isabella Montgomery. I hope I'm not calling too late." "Isabella, good to hear from you." "Not at all. I was just reviewing some staffing decisions. What can I do for you? I understand you interviewed someone today for the community health position. A Dr. Marcus Chen?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Actually, Dr. Chen failed to complete his interview. He left midway through our meeting and didn't return. Highly unprofessional behavior, I'm afraid. Isabella felt a spark of irritation at the dismissive tone. "I see. Did you happen to ask why he left?" "He mentioned something about a phone call, but frankly, Isabella, anyone who can't manage their personal affairs during a job interview isn't someone I want representing this hospital in the community." Isabella watched the city lights begin to twinkle as dusk settled over the skyline. "What if I told you that Dr. Chen left your interview to save someone's life? That he provided emergency medical care to a woman experiencing severe hypoglycemia in your hospital's parking garage?" Another pause, longer this time. "I'm not sure I understand." "Dr. Chen spent his afternoon preventing my daughter's nanny from slipping into a diabetic coma. He called 911, provided medical stabilization, and stayed with my 6-year-old daughter until I could get to the hospital. The paramedic said his quick thinking likely prevented a much more serious medical emergency." Harrison Blackwell's voice had changed when he spoke again, taking on the careful tone he used when he realized he might have made an error. "I had no idea. Dr. Chen didn't mention any of this when he returned to my office." "He returned to your office after handling a medical emergency?" "Briefly, yes. But by then I had already given his interview slot to another candidate. I told him he could reschedule through HR." Isabella made a mental note to follow up on that rescheduling process. "Harrison, I'm curious about something. In your medical opinion, what kind of doctor abandons his own job interview to help strangers in a parking garage?" "The kind of doctor we need more of in this profession," Harrison admitted reluctantly. "The kind who still remembers why he went into medicine in the first place." "Exactly my thought," Isabella said smoothly. "I'd like to know more about Dr. Chen's background. Could you send me his resume and interview materials?" "Isabella, I'm not sure that's appropriate. Personnel files are confidential." "Not as a board member reviewing hiring decisions, Harrison. As someone whose foundation is considering a significant donation to expand the community health program. I want to ensure we're supporting the right kind of medical professionals." That was a different matter entirely, and both of them knew it. The Montgomery Foundation support could mean the difference between a modest community program and a comprehensive outreach initiative that served thousands of families. "I'll have my assistant send you the relevant materials tomorrow morning," Harrison said. "And Isabella? Perhaps I was too hasty in my assessment of Dr. Chen." "Perhaps you were," Isabella agreed. "I'll speak with you soon, Harrison." As she ended the call, Isabella felt the familiar satisfaction that came from identifying a problem and beginning to solve it. Marcus Chen had impressed her not just with his medical skills, but with his character. In her experience, character was far more valuable than credentials, and far more rare. Sophia had fallen asleep against her shoulder during the phone call, exhausted from the day's excitement. Isabella smoothed her daughter's dark hair and thought about the playground where Marcus's daughter Emma was probably playing right now, unaware that her father had just made a choice that would define both their futures in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The next morning, Isabella sat in her corner office on the 32nd floor of the Montgomery building, reviewing the documents that Dr. Blackwell's assistant had sent over. Marcus Chen's resume painted a picture of exceptional promise followed by unexpected tragedy. Harvard Medical School, magna cum laude. Pediatric surgery residency at Children's Memorial with outstanding evaluations. 3 years as an attending physician with a spotless record. Then the gap. 2 years of unemployment with only a brief notation about a medical board investigation that had been resolved in his favor. Isabella had seen enough personnel files to recognize the sanitized language that hospitals use to describe complicated situations. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Patricia, it's Isabella Montgomery. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Dr. Patricia Vance, Chief of Pediatric Surgery at Children's Memorial, had been Isabella's primary contact during the foundation's major renovations. She was known for her directness and her unwillingness to engage in hospital politics. "Of course, Isabella. What can I do for you?" "I'm calling about a former resident of yours, Marcus Chen. His name came up in connection with our community outreach funding." There was a warm note in Dr. Vance's voice when she replied. "Marcus Chen. Now there's a name I haven't heard in too long. He was one of the finest surgical residents I ever trained. Brilliant hands, exceptional judgment, and more importantly, he truly understood that we're treating children, not just medical conditions." "What happened to him, Patricia?" "His file shows a gap in employment but very little detail." Dr. Vance sighed audibly. "Marcus got caught in the crossfire of a malpractice suit that should never have been filed. A 12-year-old girl came in for emergency appendectomy. Standard procedure, nothing complicated. But she had an undiagnosed allergy to one of the anesthesia drugs. Marcus followed every protocol perfectly, but the child suffered complications." "That sounds like a medical accident, not malpractice," Isabella said. "Exactly. But the family's lawyer convinced them that someone must be at fault. The hospital administration, worried about publicity and insurance costs, quietly encouraged Marcus to resign while the case was pending. They promised to support him when it was resolved, but by the time the medical board cleared him completely, they had already replaced him." Isabella felt a familiar anger rising in her chest. She had seen too many good people destroyed by institutional cowardice. What happened to the child? She recovered fully. Lives a normal life now. The allergic reaction was severe, but Marcus's quick response prevented any permanent damage. Ironically, his actions probably saved her life, but her family sued him anyway. And no other hospital would hire him? Would you hire a surgeon with an active malpractice case? Even knowing he might be innocent? Most administrators won't take that risk. By the time Marcus was cleared, he had been out of practice too long. Surgery requires constant skill maintenance. Isabella made notes as they talked. "Where is he now?" "I honestly don't know. I heard through colleagues that he was struggling financially. He has a young daughter, lost his wife in a car accident when the child was very small. Last I heard, he was applying for non-surgical positions, just trying to get back into medicine somehow." The pieces of Marcus Chen's story were falling into place, and Isabella found herself more intrigued than ever. A brilliant surgeon brought down by circumstances beyond his control, fighting to rebuild his career while raising a daughter alone. Yesterday's choice to help Carolina and Sophia wasn't an aberration, it was consistent with everything she was learning about his character. "Patricia, in your medical opinion, could Marcus return to surgery if given the opportunity?" "With proper retraining and supervision, absolutely. His skills were exceptional, and his judgment was always sound. The 2-year gap is a hurdle, but not an insurmountable one for someone of his caliber. Isabella thanked Dr. Vance and ended the call. She walked to her office windows, which offered a panoramic view of the city. Somewhere out there, Marcus Chen was probably searching job listings, making phone calls, trying to figure out how to pay his rent and care for his daughter. Meanwhile, the medical community had lost access to a gifted surgeon because of legal fears and administrative timidity. Her assistant knocked on the door and entered with a fresh cup of coffee. "Mrs. Montgomery, your 10 o'clock appointment is here. The mayor's office about the education initiative." "Thank you, Jennifer. One more thing, I need you to research something for me. Find out everything you can about Marcus Chen. Address, current employment status, financial situation. Use the Foundation's research department if necessary." "Of course." "Is this related to a potential grant recipient?" "Possibly," Isabella said, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was planning yet. "Just gather the information discreetly." As her assistant left, Isabella's phone buzzed with a text message from Sophia's school. The first-grade class was putting together care packages for families in need, and they were asking parents to suggest recipients. Isabella smiled at the timing. Sometimes the universe provided exactly the opportunities you needed. She thought about Marcus's careful interaction with Sophia yesterday, the way he had knelt to her level, spoken to her with respect rather than condescension. Emma Chen, his 80-year-old daughter, probably attended elementary school somewhere in the city. Perhaps she and Sophia could meet under better circumstances. Isabella opened her laptop and began researching elementary schools in the area where Marcus had listed his address. It was a modest neighborhood, working-class families struggling to make ends meet. The kind of place where children learned early that life could be unpredictable, that parents worked hard but sometimes came home tired and worried. She had grown up in a similar neighborhood before her father's business success changed their circumstances. She remembered the careful way her mother had counted grocery money, the pride her parents had taken in providing for their family despite limited resources. Most importantly, she remembered the kindness of neighbors who had helped when times were especially difficult. The morning meetings proceeded as scheduled, but Isabella's mind kept returning to Marcus Chen. By lunchtime, she had made a decision that surprised even her. She was going to find Marcus Chen and offer him more than just another job interview. She was going to offer him a chance to reclaim the career he had lost and the dignity that had been taken from him. But first, she needed to understand exactly what she was dealing with. Financial problems could be solved with money, but wounded pride and broken dreams required more delicate handling. She picked up her phone and dialed her foundation's executive director. "Charles, I need you to set up a meeting for me. Quietly and carefully. And I want you to prepare a full analysis of our medical education grant programs. I think we're about to expand into some new territory." 2 days later, Marcus sat at the kitchen table in his small apartment, surrounded by job applications and rejection letters. Emma was across from him, working on her math homework with the focused concentration she had inherited from him. The afternoon sunlight filtered through their thin curtains, illuminating the stack of bills that seemed to grow larger each day. The rent notice had arrived that morning. 10 days to pay or face eviction proceedings. Marcus had applied to 17 different positions in the past week, from hospital orderly to medical equipment sales. 3 had responded with polite rejections citing his overqualification. The rest hadn't bothered to reply at all. "Daddy," Emma said quietly, not looking up from her worksheet. "Jessica's mom said they're hiring at the grocery store where she works. Maybe you could ask about that?" Marcus felt his chest tighten at his daughter's carefully neutral tone. At 8 years old, Emma had learned to offer suggestions without putting pressure on him, to worry about their situation without adding to his burden. No child should have to develop such diplomatic skills. "That's a good idea, sweetheart. I'll check into that tomorrow." Emma nodded and returned to her math problems. Marcus watched her for a moment, noting how she chewed her pencil eraser when concentrating, how her dark hair fell across her face in the same way Sarah's used to. His daughter was growing up too fast, taking on emotional responsibilities that belonged to adults. His phone rang, displaying a number he didn't recognize. Marcus almost ignored it, expecting another robocall or collection agency, but something made him answer. Dr. Chen? This is Charles Whitman from the Montgomery Foundation. Mrs. Montgomery asked me to call you about a potential opportunity. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The Montgomery Foundation. Isabella Montgomery, Sophia's mother. I'm listening. Mrs. Montgomery would like to meet with you to discuss a position with our medical outreach programs. Would you be available tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock? Marcus glanced at his calendar, which was embarrassingly empty. Yes, I'm available. Where should I meet her? The Foundation offices, downtown on 5th Street. I'll text you the address and floor number. After ending the call, Marcus stared at his phone in disbelief. What part of this story resonates most with you as you listen? Perhaps you've experienced the weight of financial pressure while trying to maintain dignity in front of your children, or maybe you've witnessed someone's kindness creating unexpected opportunities when hope seemed lost. These moments of connection across different circumstances remind us that help often comes from the most surprising places. Emma looked up from her homework. Was that about a job, Daddy? Maybe, Emma. A lady I helped the other day wants to talk to me about working with her foundation. The lady with the little girl who was scared? Marcus smiled, touched by his daughter's memory for details. Yes, that's right. Her name is Mrs. Montgomery, and her daughter is named Sophia. Is Sophia nice? She seemed very sweet. About your age, maybe a little younger. Emma's eyes brightened with interest. Does she like to draw? I made a really good picture of a butterfly today at school. I'm sure she would love to see it, Marcus said, though he cautioned himself against getting Emma's hopes up about making new friends. Tomorrow's meeting could be anything from a genuine job opportunity to a polite gesture of gratitude that would lead nowhere. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus researched the Montgomery Foundation online. What he found impressed and intimidated him in equal measure. Isabella Montgomery had inherited a modest real estate business from her father and transformed it into a diversified portfolio worth hundreds of millions. The foundation she had established after her husband's death focused on education, healthcare, and supporting displaced professionals. The foundation's medical programs were particularly extensive. They funded retraining scholarships for healthcare workers, supported free clinics in underserved communities, and provided grants for medical research. Marcus found several news articles about professionals who had received foundation support after career setbacks. A nurse who had returned to practice after cancer treatment. A doctor who had retrained in a new specialty after an injury ended his surgical career. The pattern was clear. Isabella Montgomery had made it her mission to help medical professionals rebuild their lives after unexpected challenges. Marcus wondered if his situation fit that criteria, or if tomorrow's meeting was simply a wealthy woman's way of saying thank you for helping her daughter. He spent an hour researching interview strategies and reviewing his medical knowledge, trying to prepare for questions he couldn't anticipate. Finally, exhaustion forced him to close his laptop and attempt sleep, though his mind continued racing with possibilities and fears. At 3 a.m, Marcus was awakened by Emma calling his name. He found her sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. I had a bad dream, she whispered as he sat beside her. We had to move away, and I couldn't find you anywhere. Marcus gathered his daughter into his arms, feeling her small body trembling against his chest. Just a dream, sweetheart. Daddy's right here, and we're not going anywhere. But what if we can't pay the rent? What if we have to leave our apartment? Marcus held her tighter, wishing he could promise that everything would be fine, that they would never have to move again. Instead, he chose honesty tempered with hope. We might have to make some changes, Emma. But whatever happens, we'll face it together. Tomorrow I'm going to meet with a very nice lady who might have a job for me. And even if that doesn't work out, Daddy will figure something out. I always do, don't I? Emma nodded against his shoulder. You're the best daddy in the whole world. As Marcus tucked his daughter back into bed, he made a silent promise. Tomorrow's meeting with Isabella Montgomery would be more than just another job interview. It would be his chance to prove that some people were worth investing in, that character and compassion still mattered in a world that often seemed to value only credentials and connections. He had lost one opportunity by choosing to help others. Perhaps, if he was very lucky, that same choice might lead to something better than anything he could have imagined. The Montgomery Foundation occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown tower, its lobby decorated with photographs of the communities and individuals their programs had helped. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in his best suit and carrying the same worn leather portfolio that had accompanied him to the disastrous interview with Dr. Blackwell. The receptionist, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, directed him to a comfortable seating area overlooking the city. Marcus tried to calm his nerves by studying the Foundation's mission statement displayed on the wall. Empowering individuals to rebuild their lives through education, opportunity, and compassion. The words felt like a direct response to his current situation. Dr. Chen? A tall man in an expensive suit approached him. I'm Charles Whitman, the Foundation's executive director. Mrs. Montgomery is ready to see you. Charles led him through a maze of offices buzzing with quiet activity. Staff members worked at computers, coordinated phone calls, and reviewed what appeared to be grant applications. The atmosphere was professional but warm, more like a well-run nonprofit than a corporate headquarters. Isabella's office was spacious but not ostentatious, with large windows and comfortable furniture that invited conversation rather than intimidation. She rose from behind her desk as Marcus entered, extending her hand with the same grace he remembered from the hospital. Dr. Chen, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. Can I offer you coffee or water? Coffee would be wonderful, thank you, Marcus replied, settling into a leather chair across from her desk. Isabella poured coffee from a silver service and handed him a cup. The china was delicate, probably worth more than Marcus earned in a month back when he had been earning anything at all. I want to start by thanking you again for what you did for Carolina and Sophia, Isabella said, taking the chair beside him rather than retreating behind her desk. Carolina is fully recovered, by the way. She'll be back to work next week. I'm glad to hear that. How is Sophia handling everything? Like most 6-year-olds, she's remarkably resilient. She's been asking about you actually. Whether you found another job, how your daughter Emma is doing. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest at the mention of his daughter's name. Emma would be delighted to know that Sophia remembered her. Dr. Chen, Isabella continued, her tone becoming more serious. I've been learning about your background. Dr. Patricia Vance spoke very highly of your surgical skills and your character. I understand you've faced some significant challenges over the past 2 years. Marcus nodded carefully, unsure how much Isabella knew about his situation. The malpractice case was a matter of public record, but most people didn't understand the complexities of what had actually happened. I also understand, Isabella said gently, that you were completely exonerated by the medical board. That your quick thinking actually prevented a much worse outcome for that child. Marcus felt his shoulders relax slightly. Yes, that's correct. But the damage to my career was already done by the time the investigation concluded. Isabella leaned forward slightly. What would you say if I told you that I believe good doctors deserve second chances? That the medical community's loss of your skills is ultimately the community's loss? I would say that's a generous perspective, but the reality is that most hospitals won't take the risk of hiring someone with my history. Isabella smiled, and Marcus caught a glimpse of the steel beneath her polished exterior. Most hospitals don't have the Montgomery Foundation as a partner. Dr. Chen, I'd like to propose something that might sound unusual. Marcus waited, his coffee cup forgotten in his hands. Our foundation has been developing a new program to support displaced medical professionals. We provide retraining opportunities, mentorship, and placement assistance for doctors who have faced career disruptions through no fault of their own. That sounds like an incredible program, Marcus said cautiously. We'd like you to be our first participant. Not as a charity case, but as a partner in developing something that could help dozens of other medical professionals in similar situations. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. What exactly would that involve? 6 months of supervised practice to refresh your surgical skills. Placement in a residency-style program at Children's Memorial, with full salary and benefits. Dr. Vance has already agreed to serve as your supervising physician. Marcus stared at her in disbelief. You're offering me a chance to return to surgery? Eventually, yes. But there's more. We want you to help us design the program for others who come after you. Your experience with the obstacles and challenges would be invaluable in creating something truly effective. Marcus set down his coffee cup with trembling hands. Mrs. Montgomery, I don't know what to say. This is far more than I ever expected. You can start by calling me Isabella. And you can say yes if you're interested. Marcus thought of Emma, of the eviction notice sitting on his kitchen table, of the medical textbooks he had refused to sell because they represented who he used to be and who he hoped to become again. There would be conditions, of course, Isabella continued. You'd be expected to maintain the highest standards, to prove that our confidence in you is well placed. The medical community will be watching to see if this kind of second chance program actually works. I understand, Marcus said. And Isabella? Thank you for seeing something in me that most people haven't been able to see. Isabella's expression softened. Dr. Chen, 2 days ago you gave up a job opportunity to help strangers in a parking garage. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Skills can be refreshed, knowledge can be updated, but integrity like yours can't be taught. Marcus felt tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. When would this begin? Next Monday, if you're ready. Dr. Vance is expecting you at 7 a.m. for orientation. As Marcus left the foundation building an hour later, his head spinning with details about salary, benefits, and training schedules, he realized that his choice to help Carolina and Sophia had led to something he never could have imagined. Not just a job, but a chance to reclaim his identity as a surgeon, to rebuild the career he had thought was lost forever. He couldn't wait to tell Emma that their luck had finally changed. Marcus drove home in a daze, Isabella's words echoing in his mind. 6 months of supervised practice. Full salary and benefits. A chance to return to surgery. The opportunity felt so surreal that he kept glancing at the folder on his passenger seat, filled with program details and employment documents, just to confirm it was real. He picked up Emma from after-school care, trying to contain his excitement until they could talk privately. She chattered about her day as they walked to the car, showing him a drawing she had made of their apartment building with careful attention to the flower boxes that didn't actually exist. I drew what it could look like if we had pretty flowers, she explained, climbing into her booster seat. Maybe someday we could plant some real ones. Maybe we could, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion as he thought about the financial security that Isabella's offer would provide. At home, Marcus helped Emma with her homework while he prepared dinner. Spaghetti again, but tonight it felt like a celebration meal rather than another reminder of their limited budget. As Emma worked on her reading assignment, Marcus reviewed the documents Isabella had given him. The salary was more than he had earned as a resident, with full health insurance and a housing allowance that would cover their rent and then some. But beyond the financial relief, the program offered something even more valuable, the chance to rebuild his professional identity, to become Dr. Marcus Chen again instead of just Emma's struggling father. Emma finished her homework and looked up at him expectantly. Daddy, you seem different today. Happy different. Marcus closed the folder and gave his daughter his full attention. I have some very good news, sweetheart. Remember the lady I told you about? Mrs. Montgomery? The one with the little girl named Sophia? That's right. Well, Mrs. Montgomery offered me a job today. A very special job at the hospital. Emma's eyes widened. You mean you get to be a doctor again? Marcus knelt beside her chair, taking her small hands in his. Yes, Emma. I get to be a doctor again. I'll be learning and training for a while, but eventually I'll be able to help sick children get better, just like I used to do." Emma threw her arms around his neck, and Marcus felt her tears against his cheek. "I knew you would find a way, Daddy. I knew someone would see how good you are." Marcus held his daughter tightly, overwhelmed by her faith in him even during their darkest moments. They stayed like that for several minutes, both of them crying tears of relief and joy. "Will we have enough money now?" Emma asked quietly. "Can we stay in our apartment?" "We'll have enough money," Marcus assured her. "And yes, we can definitely stay here. In fact, we might even be able to get you those new shoes you need." Emma pulled back to look at him seriously. "And maybe we could buy groceries without using coupons sometimes?" Marcus laughed, amazed by his daughter's practical priorities. "Yes, sweetheart. We can buy groceries without coupons." That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus called his former colleague Dr. James Morrison, one of the few friends who had stayed in touch during his professional exile. James had been a fellow resident during Marcus's training and now worked at a hospital across town. "Marcus." James's voice was warm with surprise. "How are you doing? It's been too long." "I'm doing well, actually. Better than I've been in a long time. James, I need to tell you about something incredible that happened today." Marcus related the entire story, from his failed interview with Dr. Blackwell to his encounter with Carolina and Sophia, to Isabella's extraordinary offer. James listened without interruption, occasionally making sounds of amazement. "Marcus, this is incredible. Dr. Vance is one of the most respected surgeons in the city. If she's willing to supervise your return, that's a huge endorsement." "I still can't quite believe it's real," Marcus admitted. 2 days ago I was facing eviction, and now I have a chance to return to surgery." "You deserve this, Marcus. What happened to you was completely unfair. The medical community lost a gifted surgeon because of politics and fear." Marcus walked to his kitchen window, looking out at the modest neighborhood where he and Emma had learned to build a life with limited resources. Tomorrow, everything would begin to change. "James, can I ask you something? What if I've lost too much? What if 2 years away from surgery has left me unable to perform at the level I used to?" James was quiet for a moment before responding. "Marcus, do you remember the first time you assisted on a pediatric heart surgery? You were terrified that you weren't ready, that you would make a mistake that could cost a child's life." "I remember," Marcus said. "But once you were in that operating room, once you had a scalpel in your hands and a patient who needed you, all the fear disappeared. You became exactly who you were meant to be." Marcus felt a familiar stirring in his chest, the calling that had driven him through medical school and residency. The desire to heal, to use his hands and mind to save lives, to make a difference in the world one patient at a time. "You're right," Marcus said. "Being a surgeon isn't just what I do. It's who I am." "Exactly." And Isabella Montgomery recognized that. "She saw past your circumstances to your character and potential." After ending the call, Marcus sat at his kitchen table and opened his medical textbooks for the first time in months. The familiar diagrams and surgical procedures felt like greetings from old friends. He had work to do to prepare for Monday morning, knowledge to refresh and confidence to rebuild. But for the first time in 2 years, Marcus Chen felt like himself again. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of his return to medicine, his chance to prove that second chances could lead to something even better than what had been lost. He thought about Emma sleeping peacefully in her room, no longer worried about eviction notices or grocery money. He thought about Isabella Montgomery's faith in his potential and Dr. Vance's willingness to guide his return to surgery. Most of all, he thought about the choice he had made in that parking garage, the decision to help strangers that had seemed to cost him everything but had actually given him back his life. Monday morning arrived with the crisp promise of autumn, and Marcus stood outside Children's Memorial Hospital at 6:45, wearing scrubs that felt both foreign and familiar after 2 years away. The weight of his stethoscope around his neck was like greeting an old friend, a tangible reminder of the physician he had been and was fighting to become again. Dr. Patricia Vance met him in the surgical department's conference room, her silver hair pulled back in the same practical style he remembered from his residency. She looked exactly as she had 5 years ago, with the same sharp intelligence in her eyes and the same aura of absolute competence that had made her legendary among surgical residents. "Marcus," she said, standing to shake his hand. "Welcome back. I've been looking forward to this day ever since Isabella Montgomery called me about the Foundation's new program. Dr. Vance, I can't thank you enough for agreeing to supervise my return. I know this is an unusual situation." She gestured for him to sit across from her at the polished conference table. "Unusual perhaps, but not unprecedented. The medical field loses too many good doctors to circumstances beyond their control. If we can develop a successful model for bringing them back, we'll be serving patients better in the long run." Marcus felt some of his nervous tension ease. Dr. Vance had always possessed the rare ability to make complex situations seem manageable through clear thinking and practical planning. "Now," she continued, opening a thick folder. "Let's talk about your reintegration schedule. For the first month, you'll observe surgeries and work with me on case reviews. I want to assess where your knowledge stands and identify any areas that need refreshing." Marcus nodded, pulling out a notebook to take notes. "That makes perfect sense. Month 2, you'll begin assisting on routine procedures. Nothing complicated at first, just basic appendectomies and minor repairs. By month 3, if your skills are where I expect them to be, you'll start taking primary responsibility for cases under my supervision." The timeline felt both ambitious and reasonable. Marcus had spent the weekend reviewing surgical journals and reacquainting himself with recent developments in pediatric procedures. The fundamentals hadn't changed, but medical technology and techniques had continued evolving during his absence. Dr. Vance studied his face carefully. "Marcus, I need to ask you directly. How do you feel about returning to surgery? Any anxiety or concerns I should know about?" Marcus considered the question honestly. "There's definitely some nervousness about whether my skills have deteriorated. But when I think about being in an operating room again, helping a child who needs surgery, I feel complete. Like I'm finally returning to who I'm supposed to be." "That's exactly what I hoped to hear," Dr. Vance said with satisfaction. "Technical skills can be refreshed, but surgical instinct and the calling to heal can't be taught. You either have them or you don't." A knock on the conference room door interrupted their conversation. Dr. Harrison Blackwell entered, his expression carefully neutral as he approached the table. "Dr. Vance, Dr. Chen," he said with a slight nod to each of them. "I wanted to stop by and welcome Dr. Chen back to Children's Memorial." Marcus stood to shake his hand, unsure what to expect from the man who had dismissed him so curtly just a week ago. "Dr. Chen," Dr. Blackwell continued, "I owe you an apology. Isabella Montgomery made me aware of the circumstances surrounding your departure from our interview. Your choice to provide emergency medical care was exactly the kind of decision we want our physicians to make." "Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. I understand why my absence seemed unprofessional without context." "Actually," Dr. Blackwell said, his tone warming slightly, "your actions that day reminded me why I went into medicine in the first place. We sometimes get so focused on administrative efficiency that we forget our primary obligation is to help people in need. If this story is touching your heart right now, wherever you are in the world listening to this, you probably understand that feeling of being reminded why you chose your own path in life. Sometimes it takes witnessing someone else's courage to remember our own purpose. We'd love to know where you're listening from and how this story of second chances resonates with your own experiences." Dr. Vance smiled at the exchange. "Harrison, I was just explaining to Marcus that he'll be observing surgeries this week. Would you like to join us for the 10 o'clock procedure? It's a routine gallbladder removal, but it might be interesting for Marcus to see our updated laparoscopic techniques." "I'd very much like that," Marcus said immediately. "I've been reading about the advances in minimally invasive procedures." The three doctors spent the next hour reviewing case files and discussing surgical protocols. Marcus found himself slipping naturally back into medical discussions, his knowledge and instincts emerging as if they had never been dormant. Dr. Vance and Dr. Blackwell exchanged approving glances as Marcus asked insightful questions about patient care and surgical approach. At 9:30, they made their way to the surgical floor. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as they passed the familiar sights of the preoperative area, nurses preparing patients, anesthesiologists reviewing charts, the controlled bustle of medical professionals preparing to save lives. In the observation gallery above Operating Room 3, Marcus watched as Dr. Vance performed the gallbladder removal with the same precision and grace he remembered. The laparoscopic equipment was indeed more advanced than what he had used 2 years ago, but the fundamental principles remained the same. Careful planning, steady hands, absolute focus on the patient's well-being. As the surgery progressed, Marcus found himself anticipating Dr. Vance's moves, his mind automatically calculating the next steps in the procedure. His hands moved slightly in his lap, muscle memory guiding them through motions he had performed hundreds of times. Dr. Blackwell noticed the unconscious movements. "You're itching to get back in there, aren't you?" Marcus smiled, realizing how obvious his eagerness must be. "It's like watching someone else drive your car. You know exactly what they should do next, and you want to help." "That's a good sign." Dr. Vance's voice came through the observation room speakers as she completed the final sutures. "Marcus, how would you have approached the adhesion we encountered near the liver?" Marcus leaned forward to study the monitor. "Given the patient's age and the extent of inflammation, would have used the same careful dissection technique you employed. The risk of perforation was too high for a more aggressive approach." "Excellent analysis, Dr. Vance replied. "Tomorrow you'll scrub in with me on a similar case. Time to get those hands working again." As they left the hospital that afternoon, Marcus felt a profound sense of homecoming. The sounds, smells, and rhythms of medical practice felt as natural as breathing. Tomorrow he would return to the operating room not as an observer but as a participant in the ancient art of healing. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma's school asking about pickup arrangements. For the first time in 2 years, Marcus could honestly say he would be late because he was working as a doctor again. 3 weeks into the program, Marcus was scrubbing in for his first primary surgery when the emergency alarm sounded throughout Children's Memorial. Dr. Vance looked up from the sink beside him, water dripping from her hands as she listened to the announcement echoing through the surgical suite. "Trauma team to emergency room 2. Multiple casualties from school bus accident. All available surgical staff report immediately." Dr. Vance met Marcus's eyes through the observation window. "This is it, Marcus. Real medicine. Are you ready?" Marcus felt his training take over, the familiar surge of focused energy that came with emergency situations. "I'm ready." They rushed to the emergency room where controlled chaos greeted them. 6 children from a middle school field trip had been injured when their bus collided with a delivery truck. The trauma bay buzzed with activity as nurses triaged patients, paramedics provided reports, and doctors assessed injuries. Dr. Blackwell approached them immediately. "Patricia, we need you in OR 12-year-old boy with internal bleeding, possible splenic rupture." "Marcus, you're with her." Marcus felt his pulse steady into the calm rhythm he remembered from his surgical days. This was what he had trained for, what he was meant to do. As they rushed toward the operating room, Dr. Vance briefed him on the patient's condition. David Martinez, age 12, vitals stable but dropping. CT scan shows fluid in the abdomen consistent with splenic injury. We need to get in there quickly to assess the damage. In the OR, Marcus stepped into his role as first assistant with the confidence of someone who had never left. His hands moved with precision as he helped position the patient, his mind automatically calculating angles and approaches while Dr. Vance made the initial incision. The injury was more complex than anticipated. The spleen was severely damaged, but more concerning was a small tear in the hepatic artery that was causing internal bleeding. Dr. Vance worked quickly to control the hemorrhage, but the confined space made it difficult to achieve proper visualization. "Marcus, I need better exposure of the hepatic vessels." Can you retract here while I control this bleeder? Marcus positioned the retractors with steady hands, immediately understanding the anatomical challenge they faced. Dr. Vance worked for several minutes, but the bleeding continued despite her efforts. The arterial tear is deeper than I initially thought, she said, her voice tight with concentration. We need to consider a different approach. Marcus studied the surgical field, his mind racing through alternative techniques. Dr. Vance, what if we mobilize the duodenum and approach the vessel from the medial aspect? It would give us better access to the proximal control point. Dr. Vance paused, considering his suggestion. That's exactly what we need. Take the lead on that mobilization, Marcus. Your hands are steadier than mine right now. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Marcus was being asked to take primary control of a complex procedure on a critically injured child. 2 months ago, he had been unemployed and facing eviction. Now, a young boy's life depended on his surgical skills. Marcus accepted the instruments with calm determination. His training, his instincts, and 2 years of forced reflection had prepared him for this moment. He began the careful dissection to mobilize the duodenum, his movements precise and confident. Beautiful technique, Dr. Vance murmured as Marcus exposed the damaged vessel with perfect visualization. Now we can see exactly what we're dealing with. The repair required delicate suturing in a confined space, but Marcus's hands moved with the muscle memory of hundreds of similar procedures. He placed each stitch with careful precision, rebuilding the arterial wall while Dr. Vance managed the surrounding tissues. Excellent work, Marcus. Check your anastomosis. Marcus released the vascular clamps and watched as blood flow resumed through the repaired artery. No bleeding, perfect hemostasis. The surgical field remained dry and clean. That was textbook perfect, Dr. Vance said, genuine admiration in her voice. I couldn't have done it better myself. The remainder of the surgery proceeded smoothly. The damaged spleen was successfully repaired rather than removed, preserving David's immune function. As they closed the abdomen, Marcus felt the deep satisfaction that came from using his skills to save a life. In the recovery room, as they watched David wake up from anesthesia, Dr. Vance placed her hand on Marcus's shoulder. That was exceptional surgery, Marcus. You've not only regained your skills, you've surpassed where you were before your hiatus. Marcus watched the monitors showing David's stable vital signs. Thank you for believing in me, Dr. Vance. For giving me this chance to prove myself again. You proved yourself the moment you chose to help strangers in a parking garage instead of protecting your own interests. Today you just confirmed what Isabella Montgomery and I already knew about your character. Dr. Blackwell entered the recovery room, having finished with his own emergency surgery. How's our young patient? Doing well, Dr. Vance replied. Marcus performed a flawless hepatic artery repair under difficult conditions. Textbook surgery from start to finish. Dr. Blackwell looked at Marcus with new respect. Dr. Chen, I believe congratulations are in order. Dr. Vance tells me you're ready to take on primary surgical responsibilities ahead of schedule. Marcus felt a surge of professional pride that he hadn't experienced in over 2 years. It feels good to be back where I belong. As the 3 surgeons left the recovery room, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Hope your day is going good, Daddy. Love you. Marcus smiled, thinking about how much had changed since that desperate afternoon when he had chosen compassion over career advancement. His decision to help Carolina and Sophia had cost him one opportunity but had led to something far more valuable, the chance to reclaim his identity as a healer and to prove that some choices, even when they seem costly, ultimately reveal who we really are. Tomorrow, Marcus Chen would officially return to the surgical schedule as an attending physician. Tonight, he would go home to Emma with the knowledge that he was finally, truly himself again. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same conference room where Dr. Vance had welcomed him back to Children's Memorial, but this time he wore the navy suit of an attending physician rather than scrubs. The Montgomery Foundation was hosting a celebration dinner to mark the success of their Displaced Professionals program, and Marcus had been asked to speak about his experience. Isabella Montgomery entered the room with Sophia beside her, both dressed elegantly for the evening's festivities. Sophia had grown taller in the months since their parking garage encounter, but she still possessed the same bright curiosity that had endeared her to Marcus during that frightening afternoon. "Dr. Chen!" Sophia exclaimed, running toward him with unbridled enthusiasm. "Mama said you're a real surgeon again." Marcus knelt to her level, marveling at how much his life had changed since the last time he had comforted this little girl. "That's right, Sophia. I get to help sick children feel better, just like the doctors helped Miss Carolina." Isabella approached with a warm smile. "Marcus, you look wonderful. The transformation has been remarkable to witness." "I owe everything to your foundation's belief in second chances," Marcus replied, standing to shake her hand. "The program has given me back my career and my sense of purpose." "Actually," Isabella said, her eyes twinkling with mischief, "I have some news that might interest you. The Montgomery Foundation has received approval to expand the Displaced Professionals program to 5 other major hospitals across the country. We'd like you to serve as the National Program Director." Marcus felt his breath catch. National Program Director? That would mean helping dozens of other medical professionals rebuild their careers. Your experience and success make you the perfect advocate for others facing similar challenges. Plus, the position comes with a substantial increase in salary and the opportunity to shape healthcare policy at the national level. Before Marcus could respond, Emma burst through the conference room doors, wearing her best dress and carrying a bouquet of flowers. "Daddy, these are for you." She presented the flowers with the solemn ceremony that 80-year-olds brought to important occasions. "Thank you, sweetheart. You look beautiful tonight." Emma noticed Sophia standing beside Isabella and smiled shyly. "Are you Sophia? Daddy told me about you." "Yes. Are you Emma? My mama says your daddy is a hero." The two girls began chattering immediately, and Marcus exchanged amused glances with Isabella as they watched their daughters forge an instant friendship. Dr. Vance entered the room, resplendent in a silver evening gown. "Marcus, there you are. I wanted to tell you that David Martinez, the boy whose surgery you performed during the bus accident, is here tonight with his family. They specifically asked to meet you." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "How is he doing?" "Completely recovered. Playing soccer again, making straight A's." His parents wanted to thank the surgeon who saved their son's life. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself surrounded by success stories. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a radiologist who had been out of practice for 3 years due to a chronic illness, had returned to full-time work through the Foundation's program. Dr. Michael Torres, whose military service had been interrupted by an injury, was now serving as an emergency room physician at a veterans hospital. Where in the world are you listening to this story tonight? Marcus thought as he looked around the room filled with medical professionals who had been given second chances. If this story of redemption and possibility has touched your heart, we hope you'll share it with others who might need to hear that setbacks don't have to be permanent. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin after the worst ones end. During dinner, Isabella stood to address the gathering. "When we started this program, we believed that good doctors deserved second chances. Tonight, we celebrate not just individual success stories, but proof that when we invest in character and compassion, we create ripple effects that benefit entire communities." She gestured toward Marcus. Dr. Marcus Chen exemplifies everything this program represents. His choice to help strangers in a parking garage cost him one opportunity but revealed the character that made him worthy of something far greater. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that the Chen Fellowship for Displaced Medical Professionals will provide full scholarships for 20 doctors annually to rebuild their careers. Marcus stood to thunderous applause, overwhelmed by the recognition. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet strength of someone who had learned that true success was measured not by what you achieved, but by whom you chose to become when everything was stripped away. 2 years ago, I thought my medical career was over. I believed that one lawsuit, one unfortunate circumstance, had defined my future permanently. Tonight, I understand that our lowest moments often prepare us for our greatest opportunities. He looked at Emma, who was watching him with pride that made his chest swell. The most important lesson I've learned is that when we choose compassion over self-interest, when we help others even at personal cost, we discover who we really are. And sometimes, the universe rewards that discovery in ways we never could have imagined. After the dinner, as Marcus and Emma walked to their car in the hospital parking garage, he paused at the exact spot where he had first encountered Carolina and Sophia. The memory felt like something from another lifetime, yet it had happened less than a year ago. "Daddy," Emma said, slipping her hand into his. "Are you happy now?" Marcus looked up at the stars visible through the garage's open levels, then down at his daughter's trusting face. "I'm more than happy, sweetheart. I'm grateful. Grateful for second chances, for people who see the best in others, and most of all, grateful for you." As they drove home to the new apartment they could now afford, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. His choice to help strangers had seemed to cost him everything but had actually given him back his life. Emma would grow up knowing that her father was not just a provider, but a healer, a man who had overcome adversity through character and determination. The Montgomery Foundation's Displaced Professionals program would help hundreds of other medical professionals rebuild their careers and reclaim their dignity. Children like David Martinez would receive life-saving surgery from doctors who had been given second chances to practice their calling. And somewhere in the city, other struggling parents were making difficult choices between self-interest and compassion, never knowing that their decisions might lead to transformations they couldn't yet imagine. Marcus Chen had learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply choose to help, even when the cost seems too high to bear. The rest, as his story proved, would take care of itself.